So thanks to Zen1 from the CRZ forum, I've now got a Honda FIT battery pack innards minus the cells on the bench. So it's all, I've managed to sort of work out where it all plugs back together, I think, pretty much. So we've got all the units plugged in. One thing we will need to try and check down, hopefully Zen1 might have this, is that the orange connectors for the BMS connections, these are almost certainly different, wired differently to each other, or certainly there might be two different types here. That's the same as in the CRZ. If that's the case, they're not the same, the connections on these. So I'm hoping that he can tell me which block each one of these came from and which one of these and which socket it plugged into, because these are almost certainly not the same either. The sockets on these will probably not be wired the same. That's the same as on the CRZ. The BMS boards connectors are not all wired the same, so we'll need to just work out which one of those goes into which plug on these BMS modules. And these are probably basically like, I've had the top off one, basically like the CRZ modules, which look like that. When it's basically going to be two inside one box, basically. So you've got two lots of connections for the cells inside the one box. So each one of these deals with 24 cells, because there's 48 in the FIT, whereas each one of these only deals with 10. So yeah, that's fine. Looking at the how it's all connected together, I was interested to see that I've got the inverter as well, which is good, and the DC to DC converter, which is underneath, and we've got the phase sensors here, so and the fan, etc., and we've got the battery control module, if you like, as well there probably. So it all looks pretty good, and then this is the main harness connector. So looking at this and looking at the colours on all these other various connectors, I'm pretty confident that we've got a green and a pink there on these BMS boards, and that's almost certainly going to be the IMA CAN line. And if we look at the connector here, we can see we've got a green and a pink at this end, and then we've got a big thick black and a big thick pink at the other end, so that's almost certainly going to be 12 volt positive and a negative. And if we look at the other end of this connector, then there is a pink or a red and a white together, which is probably the FCAN as is in the CRZ. So I think we've probably identified those. We'll probably have to find out which is the ignition, switched ignition, because if we apply 12 volts to the big wires here at the end, it probably still won't power up until we find out which is the ignition connection, sort of, so when you turn the ignition on it gets power. We might also need backup power line. So we should be able to plug it all in, power it up, and then see what messages these modules are sending out, and I'll compare that to what the CRZ system in the back of the CRZ chucks out, and see if they're in any way compatible with the messages that the CRZ uses. Probably not, but you know, it's an interesting experiment just to try. We might as well, and you never know, we might get lucky. So the only flying the ointment slightly at the moment is I don't know which ones of these plugs into which ones of these at the moment. It is possible to work it out laboriously by taking all these apart and then very, very carefully checking out the wiring to the pins and then referring them to these. But I'm hoping he'll have some more pictures, and then I can cross-reference and hopefully just plug it all back together, and then we'll know. So that'd be fairly easy. If you wanted to chop these off, you could connect them to your own cells instead of having to use these sort of Honda harness cell connector messes. So you can just chop those off. Once we identify which is the plus end, which is the minus end, etc., etc., then these can be just used with any standard lithium polymer cells, and it should work okay. So there we go. Okay, that's where we are at the minute. That's my Christmas project, try and get some CAN data from this setup. Thanks very much, Zen1.